Your mind is your most powerful tool, but how often do you feel like it's controlling you? In this video, we'll dive into the timeless wisdom of Stoicism, revealing practical techniques to take back control of your thoughts and emotions. Stay with me till the end, because mastering this could change how you handle life's toughest challenges. Number 1. Visualize yourself from an external perspective. Imagine this: you step outside yourself for a moment, like you're watching your own life unfold on a screen. It's like you're observing another person, but that person is you. This is what it means to visualize yourself from an external perspective, and it's a powerful way to gain control over your mind. When you're stuck in your thoughts, it's easy to get swept away by emotions, stress, or impulsive reactions. But when you take a step back and see things from a distance, everything changes. You're not just living in the moment, you're analyzing it, with a clearer, cooler head. Picture yourself in a tense situation. Your heartbeat races, your mind is buzzing, and the urge to react is strong. But then you mentally zoom out, almost like you're watching someone else. You see the expressions on your face, the way you're standing, and how you're breathing. Suddenly, the tension starts to lose its grip. It's like observing a character in a movie who's facing the same challenges as you, but the difference is, you have the script in your hands. You can decide how to act next, because you're no longer caught up in the whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. This shift in perspective opens up a whole new level of mental clarity. By visualizing yourself from an external point of view, you can become more objective. You start to notice patterns in your behavior that you'd normally miss when you're caught up in the moment. Maybe you're prone to overreacting, or you find yourself getting anxious about things that, in the grand scheme of things, aren't that important. When you see yourself through this detached lens, it's easier to spot these tendencies and gently correct them. You're not judging yourself harshly, you're just noticing, like a neutral observer. It's a quiet, subtle way to gain mastery over your thoughts and emotions, rather than letting them run the show. But here's the thing: this isn't just some abstract mental trick. It can actually help you develop greater self-discipline and patience. When you practice seeing yourself from the outside, you naturally start to make decisions that are more aligned with your deeper values, rather than getting lost in the chaos of the present moment. It's almost like training your brain to pause, reflect, and choose the best course of action. You're not just reacting anymore, you're responding, with purpose. The beauty of this technique is that you don't need any special tools or time to practice it. You can do it anytime, whether you're in the middle of a heated conversation, feeling overwhelmed by stress, or just reflecting on your day. All it takes is that mental shift. You become both the actor and the director of your own life, capable of stepping in and guiding yourself toward better outcomes. And over time, this way of thinking becomes second nature. You'll find that you're no longer trapped inside your head, overwhelmed by your thoughts. Instead, you'll have the power to step back, observe, and choose your path with greater wisdom. So, next time you feel like your mind is running away from you, try to take that mental step back. Visualize yourself as an outsider. Watch the scene unfold with curiosity. And you'll notice something magical happens: your mind begins to settle, and you regain control. It's like seeing life from a whole new angle, one where you're no longer a prisoner to your thoughts, but an active, thoughtful participant in your own story. Number 2. Cultivate indifference to praise and blame. Cultivating indifference to praise and blame is one of the toughest, yet most freeing, aspects of Stoic philosophy. It's about learning to care less about what others think and more about what you think, about yourself, about your actions, and about the way you live your life. The Stoics weren't advocating for a robotic, emotionless existence. They just knew that getting caught up in the highs of praise or the lows of criticism can trap you in a cycle that pulls you away from true freedom. Freedom from other people's opinions, which, if we're being honest, we don't control anyway. Imagine this: you're doing something you care about, something that matters to you, and along comes someone who applauds your effort. Feels great, right? The rush, the dopamine hit, it's addictive. But here's the thing, if you let that praise lift you up too high, you're giving away your power. Why? Because now, you've made your self-worth dependent on something you can't control. You're living for that external validation, and without realizing it, you're becoming a puppet. As soon as the compliments fade, as soon as you don't hear the praise you crave, you're left questioning yourself, doubting whether you're good enough. Praise can be a sneaky trap. On the flip side, there's blame. The criticism, the negative feedback. It stings. Sometimes it's constructive, but a lot of times, it's just noise, other people's projections, their baggage, their insecurities being thrown at you. When we're overly sensitive to blame, we let those voices get into our heads. We let it stop us from pursuing what we want. But again, we're focusing on something we have zero control over. People are going to say what they're going to say. That's just reality. You could be doing your best, living with integrity, and still, someone out there will find something to criticize. The Stoics were onto something when they said we should be indifferent to both. Not in the sense of being cold or apathetic, but in recognizing that neither praise nor blame defines who we are. The goal is to find that steady place within yourself where you know your worth, where you can look at what you've done and say, I did my best. And that's enough. Indifference doesn't mean you ignore feedback altogether, but you take it for what it is, someone else's opinion. You can listen, evaluate if it has merit, but ultimately, you remain grounded in your own values, your own self-assessment. This is what Stoicism is getting at. It's about not letting your peace of mind be swayed by the fleeting opinions of others, because opinions are exactly that, fleeting. They come, they go, and trying to chase them will just leave you exhausted. Instead of seeking approval or fearing disapproval, focus on the internal. How do you feel about what you're doing? Did you act with honesty? With integrity? If the answer is yes, then praise and blame are irrelevant. They're external decorations, but they don't change the core of who you are. Ultimately, learning to cultivate indifference isn't about rejecting people or their opinions, it's about embracing your own. It's about finding that solid ground inside yourself that can't be shaken, no matter what winds blow your way. You're the only person who truly knows your intentions, and in the end, that's all that matters. Number 3, reflecting on cosmic insignificance. Reflecting on cosmic insignificance might sound heavy at first, but it's actually a pretty freeing concept once you dive into it. Think about it, our lives, our problems, our achievements, all of it, is just a tiny speck in the vastness of the universe. The stars we see at night, those pinpricks of light, have been there for millions, even billions of years. The universe is this giant, ever-expanding thing, and we're just here, for a blink of an eye, in comparison. But here's where the magic of Stoicism kicks in. By truly internalizing how small we are in the grand scheme of things, we start to loosen our grip on the things that weigh us down. You begin to realize that the things you stress about today, whether it's a missed opportunity, an awkward conversation, or even bigger life decisions, are momentary blips. They seem huge right now, sure, but in the grand narrative of time, they're almost laughably small. This isn't meant to diminish your feelings, but to give you perspective. When you reflect on how vast the cosmos is and how tiny we are in comparison, there's this sense of peace that comes with it. The pressures we put on ourselves to succeed, to be perfect, to never mess up, they start to fade when you remind yourself that, in the scope of the universe, it's okay to stumble. You're not the center of the universe, and that's a relief. In fact, none of us are. At first, this can feel disorienting. There's a certain comfort in thinking that our personal struggles and triumphs carry weight. But once you let go of the need to be so important, there's this beautiful lightness that settles in. You start to detach from the things that don't serve you. You stop holding on to every mistake as if it defines you. You stop fearing the unknown, Because the unknown is just a part of this wild, unpredictable universe, and that's kind of exciting, right? In a way, reflecting on cosmic insignificance brings you back to the present. It reminds you that while you may not control the universe or how long you'll be in it, you can control how you respond to the time you've got. That's the heart of Stoicism, accepting what you can't change and focusing on what you can. And what you can change is your mind, your perspective, your attitude. Maybe the most surprising part of reflecting on your smallness is that it doesn't make life seem pointless. Quite the opposite. It makes you appreciate the little things, the moments you might have taken for granted. The small, daily joys of life become more meaningful when you stop trying to make everything grand and earth-shattering. You don't need to move mountains. You don't need to leave some massive legacy. You just need to live, to experience, to be present. At the end of the day, the stars don't care if you got that promotion or if you totally bombed that presentation. But that doesn't mean your life doesn't matter. It just means you have the freedom to stop worrying about things that, in the grand scheme, don't matter as much as you think they do. And that's a pretty liberating thought, don't you think? Number 4, periodic self-isolation. Let's talk about something that might sound a little strange at first, self-isolation. No, not the kind where you cut yourself off from everyone forever, but rather the kind where you consciously choose to spend some time alone, away from all the noise, the distractions, the constant pull of the outside world. Think of it as hitting a reset button for your mind. Now, we all know life can get busy. Really busy. There's always something happening, someone needing your attention, and before you know it, your mind is spinning, overwhelmed with too many thoughts, too many opinions, too many voices. That's where periodic self-isolation comes in. It's like carving out a little sanctuary of solitude just for yourself. A space where you can breathe deeply, tune out the chatter, and reconnect with what's going on inside your head. It's not about avoiding people or shutting down. It's about pausing long enough to hear your own thoughts again. Picture this, you set aside some time, whether it's a few hours or even just 15 minutes. No phone, no social media, no conversations. Just you and your thoughts. At first, it might feel uncomfortable. Maybe a little weird. We're so used to constant interaction that silence can feel almost deafening. But give it time, and you'll start to notice something incredible, clarity. All those mental knots that felt so tight start to loosen. Your thoughts, which were tangled in the rush of life, begin to straighten out. There's room now for you to think clearly, for you to actually hear your own inner voice. This practice of periodic self-isolation is like giving your mind a much-needed break. When you remove yourself from the whirlwind of daily life, you give your brain a chance to recover, to reflect, and to recharge. You can look at your challenges with fresh eyes. What seemed like an insurmountable problem might not feel so overwhelming after you've spent some time away from it. Or maybe, after a little solitude, you realize that the stress you've been carrying around isn't as heavy as it felt when you were in the middle of it. Another thing you'll notice during these moments of isolation is how much more in control of your emotions you can become. When you're surrounded by people, by constant input from the outside world, it's easy to get swept up in the energy of it all. But when you're alone, you're forced to face your emotions without distraction. That might sound intimidating, but here's the magic: when you sit with those feelings in solitude, you start to understand them better. You can observe them without judgment, without the noise of other people's opinions or expectations. And once you see them clearly, you can manage them more effectively. Periodic self-isolation also helps you connect to your deeper values. Without the constant barrage of other people's agendas, you have space to ask yourself what you really want. What's important to you? What do you need to focus on? In that quiet, you're able to realign with your own sense of purpose, to figure out what truly matters to you, without the pressure of the world constantly pulling you in different directions. So, how do you actually do this? It doesn't have to be complicated. You don't need a retreat in the mountains or a cabin in the woods. It could be as simple as taking a walk by yourself or sitting quietly in your room, no distractions, just you. The key is to make it a regular practice. It's not about withdrawing from life, it's about stepping away from the chaos long enough to regain control of your mind. It's like taking a mental vacation, but instead of packing your bags, you're unpacking your thoughts. In the end, periodic self-isolation is about giving yourself the space to think clearly, feel deeply, and connect with who you really are beneath all the noise. It's a way to regain control over your thoughts, your emotions, and your mind. And when you come back to the world, you come back stronger, more centered, and with a deeper sense of clarity. Try it, you might be surprised at how powerful a little solitude can be. Number 5. Controlling desires through abstinence. Controlling desires through abstinence is one of those ideas that sounds tough at first. It might even make you think of strict discipline or denying yourself things you enjoy, but that's not really the heart of it. In Stoicism, the whole idea is to be in control of your mind, your impulses, and, most importantly, the things you desire. It's about recognizing that desires, when left unchecked, can easily control you instead. And that's not freedom. We all have desires. It's human. Whether it's for material things, experiences, or even recognition, there's always something pulling at us. The trick is figuring out when those desires are running your life and when you're truly in charge. That's where abstinence comes in, not as punishment, but as a way to prove to yourself that you don't need those things to be happy, fulfilled, or at peace. It's like flexing your mental muscle. Let's say there's something you really want. It could be anything, something you think will make your life better, easier, more enjoyable. It's easy to convince yourself that you need it, that it's essential. But do you really? The Stoics would challenge you to pause and ask, what happens if I don't get this thing? Will my world fall apart? Most of the time, the answer is no. That's where the practice of abstinence can come in. It's about stepping back from that desire and seeing if you're still okay without it. And here's the surprising part. Once you practice abstinence, even for a little while, you realize that a lot of your desires are not as necessary as they seem. That craving you thought was so strong? It starts to fade. You feel more in control, more grounded. It's liberating to know that you don't need the thing you once thought was essential. The power it held over you weakens. But it's not just about saying no to everything all the time. That's not realistic or healthy. Stoicism isn't about rejecting life's pleasures, it's about making sure those pleasures don't control you. When you practice abstinence, you're not cutting off joy or fun. You're just taking a step back to make sure that joy and fun aren't the things driving you. It's like giving yourself space to breathe. You choose when and how you engage with those desires, instead of being pulled along by them mindlessly. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Over time, you get better at this. Your desires start to lose their grip. You begin to notice that your mind is clearer, your decisions more intentional. You're not reacting impulsively anymore. You're in the driver's seat, and that's what Stoicism is really about, self-mastery. It's the ability to say, I don't need this, and feel perfectly fine, even empowered, by that choice. The practice of abstinence is like a reset button for your mind. It clears away the clutter, the constant craving, the noise that often gets in the way of clear thinking. By intentionally stepping away from the things you want, even temporarily, you're reminding yourself that your peace of mind doesn't depend on having those things. It's yours, always. And that's a powerful realization. So, controlling desires through abstinence isn't about deprivation. It's about freedom. It's about reclaiming the space in your mind that desire tries to dominate. It's about proving to yourself, again and again, that you are in control of your thoughts, your actions, and your happiness. And in the end, that's what Stoicism is all about, becoming the master of your own life, free from the chains of unnecessary wants. Number 6. Develop a philosophy of duty. Developing a philosophy of duty might sound like something out of an ancient textbook, but it's actually a game changer when it comes to controlling your mind. Duty, in the Stoic sense, isn't about following some rigid rules or external expectations. It's about knowing what you stand for, understanding what's important to you deep down, and committing to that. It's your personal North Star. Once you figure out what that is, everything else becomes a little clearer. You can stop wasting energy on things that don't really matter, and focus your mind on what does. When we talk about duty, we're really talking about living in line with your own principles, your values. It's asking yourself, what kind of person do I want to be? Not just in some far-off future, but right now, in the little everyday decisions you make. What actions align with who you want to be? That's your duty. The Stoics believe that every one of us has a role to play, and the key to peace of mind is figuring out what that role is, and then sticking to it, even when it's hard. The tricky part? Our minds tend to pull us in 1,000 directions. One moment you're motivated and focused, and the next, you're distracted, overwhelmed, or doubting everything. But when you have a solid sense of duty, it acts like a filter. Suddenly, not everything deserves your attention. That negative thought that tries to throw you off course? It becomes just a fleeting cloud passing by. You don't chase it because you've got something more important to focus on. Your duty keeps you grounded. And here's the thing, duty isn't always glamorous or easy. It's not about chasing after what feels good in the moment, but about doing what you know is right, even when you don't feel like it. There will be days when your mind wants to give up, when it wants to take the easy way out. That's when having this philosophy of duty really pays off. It's like a mental compass that keeps you pointed in the right direction, no matter how rough the path gets. You don't let every little emotion or external event throw you off course because you know what you're here to do. Now, let's get real, this isn't about being some stoic robot who doesn't feel anything. It's not about suppressing your emotions or pretending like nothing bothers you. It's about recognizing that your emotions are there, but they don't have to run the show. Duty is what keeps your mind focused on the bigger picture. Emotions? They're like weather, they come and go. But your duty? That's the mountain that stands firm, no matter the storm. When you commit to a philosophy of duty, you free your mind from all the noise. You stop second-guessing every decision, worrying about what others think, or being pulled into every little drama. Instead, you ask yourself, does this align with my duty? Does this serve my purpose? And if the answer is no, you move on, guilt-free. It's like a mental shortcut that saves you from the endless overthinking that can bog you down. What's amazing about this approach is that it simplifies your life. Suddenly, you don't need a million different goals or plans. You just need to stay true to your duty, whatever that means for you. It gives you clarity, direction, and, most importantly, control over your mind. So, in a way, developing a philosophy of duty isn't about adding something new to your life. It's about stripping away the unnecessary, getting back to what's essential, and letting that guide you. And once you do that, you'll find your mind becomes a lot quieter, a lot more focused, and, ultimately, a lot more free. Number 7. Practicing non-attachment to relationships. Let's dive into something that sounds a bit counterintuitive but is actually deeply freeing, practicing non-attachment to relationships. Yeah, I know, relationships are often at the core of our lives, and the idea of not being attached to them might feel a little unsettling. But here's the thing, non-attachment doesn't mean you stop caring, stop loving, or stop investing in the people around you. It's not about becoming cold or distant. In fact, it's kind of the opposite. It's about caring deeply, but without losing yourself in the process. Think of it this way, relationships are like rivers. They flow, they change, they evolve. Sometimes they're calm and peaceful, other times, they can be turbulent. But here's the catch: we often try to build dams around these rivers, trying to control them, trying to hold on to them exactly as they are. We cling. We attach. We depend. And that's where we get into trouble. When you're overly attached to a relationship, your happiness starts to depend on it. You begin to wrap your sense of self-worth around another person's presence, approval, or affection. And that's risky, because no relationship stays the same forever. People grow, change, and sometimes drift apart. But if you're practicing non-attachment, you're able to flow with those changes instead of fighting against them. You remain grounded in yourself, knowing that while relationships are important, they don't define you. They're a part of your life, but not your whole life. Now, this doesn't mean you should just shrug off relationships or stop putting effort into them. Non-attachment is about finding a balance. You can still love and be present in your relationships without being consumed by them. When you're non-attached, you appreciate the other person for who they are, without needing them to be anything else for your own happiness. You're not constantly trying to fix, mold, or control them. You allow them to be free, and in doing so, you also free yourself from the heavy weight of expectation. Here's where it gets interesting: non-attachment actually makes relationships healthier. When you let go of that clinging need, you become more present, more open, more accepting. You can enjoy the relationship for what it is, without the constant anxiety about where it's going or whether it's going to last. The pressure lifts. You're not trying to force things to stay the same, and that gives both you and the other person room to breathe and grow. This practice also helps when things don't go as planned. Relationships end. People move on. Life happens. And when you're attached, that can feel devastating. It feels like you're losing a part of yourself. But with non-attachment, you're able to see the relationship for what it was, a beautiful part of your journey, but not the entirety of it. You can let go with grace, knowing that your worth isn't tied to any single person or connection. The Stoic idea behind this is simple: nothing outside of you is truly yours. Not your possessions, not your status, and yes, not even your relationships. People come into your life for a time, but they're not something you can possess or hold on to. Once you accept that, you start to appreciate relationships in a more profound way. You see them as experiences, moments to be cherished, but not clung to. And that gives you so much peace. So how do you practice non-attachment in relationships? Start by recognizing when you're getting too caught up in needing someone else to validate you or make you happy. Step back. Remind yourself that you are whole on your own. This doesn't mean pulling away emotionally, it means stepping into a space where you can love and appreciate without the desperate need for things to stay the same. It's about loosening that grip, so you can experience relationships with more freedom, joy, and, oddly enough, more love. In the end, non-attachment is like learning to hold things lightly. It's knowing that people will come and go, that relationships will change, and being okay with that. You're still there, grounded in yourself, able to love fully without fear of loss or disappointment. And that kind of love? It's so much more powerful, because it's free from the chains of expectation and attachment. It's love without conditions. It's love with freedom. Number 8, cognitive reframing. Cognitive reframing is like having a superpower for your mind. It's the ability to shift your perspective, to see things in a new light, and to change the way you interpret the world around you. In Stoicism, this is key. Why? Because, as the Stoics teach, it's not the events in our lives that upset us, it's how we think about those events. Our thoughts, not the outside world, are what drive our emotions. And this is where reframing comes in. Think of cognitive reframing as hitting the refresh button in your brain. When something happens, you don't have to stick with your first, automatic reaction. You can step back, look at the situation, and ask yourself, is there another way I can view this? It's like you're zooming out, seeing the bigger picture instead of getting lost in the details. Here's the thing, we're constantly creating stories in our heads about what's happening around us. Sometimes those stories are helpful, but other times they drag us down. We might assume the worst, catastrophize, or make a mountain out of a molehill. Cognitive reframing is a way to take back control of that narrative. Instead of letting your mind run wild with negative interpretations, you get to decide what story you want to tell yourself. Let's break it down a little. Imagine something happens that frustrates you, something you didn't expect, or maybe even something that feels unfair. Your initial reaction might be anger, disappointment, or even stress. That's normal. But Stoicism teaches us that we can choose how we respond. You can look at the same situation and ask, how can I see this differently? Maybe it's an opportunity to learn. Maybe it's a chance to grow in patience. Or maybe, just maybe, it's not as big of a deal as your emotions are making it out to be. The beauty of cognitive reframing is that it doesn't change the situation itself. It changes your relationship to the situation. And that's huge. Because once you can shift your perspective, the grip that event has on you starts to loosen. You feel less overwhelmed, less reactive, and more grounded in how you handle things. The Stoics were all about this mindset shift. They knew that while you can't always control what happens to you, you can control how you interpret it. Cognitive reframing isn't about pretending everything is perfect or denying reality. It's about seeing reality from different angles, choosing the interpretation that serves you best, and ultimately, finding peace in that. Now, this doesn't mean it's easy. Our minds are used to certain patterns of thinking. It takes practice to catch yourself in the middle of a negative thought spiral and say, wait, is there another way to see this? But the more you practice, the more natural it becomes. Over time, you start to notice that you're no longer at the mercy of your initial reactions. You have the power to pause, reflect, and choose a new way of seeing things. In fact, once you get the hang of it, reframing can feel empowering. You're no longer just reacting to life, you're shaping your response. And that's what Stoicism is all about: control over your mind, your emotions, your reactions. It's not about controlling the outside world, which, let's be honest, is impossible, but controlling how you think about it. That's where your real power lies. So, cognitive reframing is like training your mind to be more flexible. It's a tool you can use in any situation, big or small, to change the way you feel by changing the way you think. You might still feel challenged, or even frustrated at times, but with this practice, you learn to manage those feelings. You learn that no matter what happens, you can always choose a perspective that helps rather than hinders. That's the Stoic way, finding freedom, not in changing the world, but in changing how you see it. Number 9, visualization and affirmations. Visualization and affirmations might seem like a modern self-help thing, but they're actually rooted in ancient Stoicism. It's wild, right? The Stoics were all about training the mind, and these tools fit perfectly into that philosophy. Picture this: your mind is like a garden. What you plant in it, what you water, what you let grow, that shapes how you see the world, how you respond to it, and how you carry yourself through it. Visualization and affirmations are just ways of planting the right seeds. Let's start with visualization. It's simple, but so powerful. Stoics would recommend visualizing the challenges you might face, imagining the setbacks, the frustrations, the things that could go wrong. But this isn't about making yourself anxious or focusing on the negatives. It's about mentally preparing yourself, so when these things actually happen, you don't get caught off guard. You've already been there, in your mind. You've faced it, processed it, and you're ready to handle it with grace. This mental rehearsal builds a kind of inner resilience. If you've imagined yourself staying calm in a tough situation, you're more likely to stay calm when that situation comes up. It's like tricking your brain into thinking, hey, I've done this before. I know how to deal with this. Your mind becomes your ally instead of your enemy. You don't freeze up or react impulsively. Instead, you respond with intention, with clarity, because you've already practiced it in your head. Then there are affirmations. Now, don't think of these as cheesy phrases you just repeat without meaning. Stoic affirmations are about reinforcing the core principles you want to live by. They're like reminders to yourself, mental nudges in the right direction. It's telling your brain, I've got this, but in a deeper way. You're affirming your values, your strength, your ability to handle whatever comes your way. When you affirm something over and over, it starts to sink in. Your mind begins to believe it because you've laid down that track, again and again, and it becomes part of how you see yourself. The real beauty of affirmations is that they don't have to be loud or grand. They can be quiet, almost like whispers in the back of your mind. I am in control of how I respond. Or, this moment doesn't define me. Short, simple phrases that remind you of your power to choose your reactions. These affirmations keep you grounded when the chaos of life tries to shake you. They help you hold steady, no matter what's happening around you. When you combine visualization with affirmations, you're creating a kind of mental toolkit. You've prepared for what's coming, and you've armed yourself with the mindset to handle it. You can see yourself succeeding, navigating challenges, staying true to your principles, and at the same time, you're reminding yourself that you can. It's like setting up a mental safety net for when things get tough. When the world feels overwhelming or you're faced with unexpected stress, you don't crumble because you've already done the mental work. This practice also strengthens your self-control. The more you visualize staying composed, the more you affirm your ability to handle pressure, the stronger your mind becomes. You start noticing that situations that once threw you off your game now feel manageable. It's not magic, it's just mental conditioning. You're training your mind to respond in the way you want it to, not in the way it wants to in the heat of the moment. In a nutshell, visualization and affirmations are like exercises for your brain. They help you stay focused on what matters, prepare for challenges, and build the kind of mental toughness that lets you handle life with a little more ease, a little more clarity. They're your way of taking control of your mind, one thought at a time. Number 10. Self-discipline and willpower. Self-discipline and willpower, two words that can feel heavy, right? Like they're the gatekeepers to the life you want, but somehow always just out of reach. But what if they're not? What if mastering self-discipline and willpower isn't about forcing yourself to be a rigid, perfect version of yourself, but instead about creating a rhythm, a flow, where you're in charge of your choices, and not the other way around? Let's be real, self-discipline can feel like a grind. It's that quiet voice urging you to stick with what you said you'd do, even when you really don't feel like it. It's easy to think of it as this punishing force, something that's hardwired or only for the superhuman. But the truth is, self-discipline is more like a muscle. It grows the more you use it. The trick is to stop seeing it as a battle. Instead of thinking, ugh, I have to do this, flip it. Think, I get to do this. It's a mindset shift that changes everything. It's no longer about forcing yourself but guiding yourself, with purpose. You see, Stoicism teaches us that our true power lies in what's under our control. And, guess what? Your actions, your choices, are all under your control. That's where willpower comes in. Willpower is like the gatekeeper between intention and action. You can have the best plans, the clearest goals, but without willpower, they just stay stuck in the dream stage. It's the force that keeps you moving when your mind is throwing every excuse in the book at you. But here's the secret, willpower isn't about some Herculean effort. It's about small, consistent choices that lead you to where you want to go. Think of it like this, self-discipline is the road, and willpower is the vehicle you drive on it. And like any vehicle, it needs fuel. You can't run on empty forever. If you're constantly pushing yourself to the max without any brakes, that willpower is going to run out fast. So, part of controlling your mind is learning how to conserve your willpower, to use it wisely. This is where routines come in. When you build habits, when you create structures in your day, you're not burning through willpower as much because things start to become automatic. You don't have to will yourself into brushing your teeth, right? It's just something you do. You want the important things in your life to feel like that. But let's not pretend it's always easy. There are going to be days when you're tempted to give in. Days when your mind is like, nah, not today, and you feel the pull to just take the easy way out. And that's where your practice comes in. Stoicism teaches that discomfort isn't something to run from, it's something to lean into. Every time you resist that temptation, every time you follow through on what you set out to do, you're strengthening that willpower muscle. You're proving to yourself, I'm in control here. One thing to keep in mind, self-discipline isn't about perfection. It's not about beating yourself up if you slip up. That's where a lot of people go wrong. They miss one workout or have one unproductive day, and suddenly, the whole thing feels pointless. But Stoicism reminds us that setbacks are part of the process. What matters isn't that you fell off, but that you get back on. You don't need to be perfect, just consistent. Self-discipline is a long game, a practice of persistence. Another thing is, self-discipline isn't about saying no to everything. It's about saying yes to the right things. When you're in control of your mind, you're choosing what's best for you in the long term, not what feels good in the short term. That's real power. You're not a slave to impulses or distractions. You're calling the shots. At the end of the day, self-discipline and willpower aren't about making your life harder. They're about giving you freedom. The freedom to choose the life you want, rather than being pulled in every direction by fleeting desires or external pressures. It's about taking control, knowing that you have the power to shape your own path, one choice at a time. So, start small. Flex that willpower. Build those habits. And remember, you're in the driver's seat. That's how you control your mind, through deliberate, mindful action, and the quiet, steady strength of self-discipline. And there you have it, practical ways to take control of your mind using the timeless principles of Stoicism. Remember, the power to shape your thoughts, reactions, and ultimately your life is within you. It's not about eliminating challenges but mastering how you respond to them. By focusing on what you can control and letting go of what you can't, you create a stronger, more resilient mind. If you found value in this video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more insights on personal growth and mental mastery. Share this with someone who could benefit from a Stoic perspective, and as always, stay mindful, stay focused, and keep striving towards inner peace. Thanks for watching.